Hey there, welcome to a brand new episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. It's the podcast that goes behind the scenes of the fantasy football industry through interviews with some of the best in the business. On this episode, I was joined by Alfredo Brown of Footballguys. We talked about all kinds of things, including live drafting, his fantasy football expo experience, missing out on Dan Marino, college football scouting, SEO, the hurdles he's faced throughout his career, how he got started with Footballguys, and so much more. Follow Alfredo on Twitter at @thepretendgm. You can follow me, Kacey Kasem, at @thekaceyKasem, and the podcast at GetReal_pod. My content is found with Rotoballer, Fantasy Six Pack, and South Harmon Fantasy Football. And check out SundayDreamersClub.com for some rad fantasy football inspired t-shirts and sweatshirts. This podcast is a proud member of the DAP Network. And now, here's my chat with Alfredo Brown on Get Real with Kacey Kasem.
No, I love it. I love the cold open. Those are my favorite. We do that for my show too.
Excellent. All right. Okay, so I have Alfredo on the show with me today. Very excited. As I always say, I'm always excited for my guests, but this one's great too. This one is a long time coming, I think. I should have reached out to him sooner. I have a list, and the list is so long, but we got to him, and I'm so excited because his name gets brought up a lot on here. Yes, I'm giving you a lot of compliments right now, but you're a very awesome dude. So let's get to know you more on the show. Let's get to kind of find out more about Alfredo Brown. Let's pull back the curtains and see what's up. Like, I don't know, childhood, for instance. Did you play sports or watch sports or anything like that when you were growing up?
Yeah, so we actually just finished writing these little blurbs for Mother's Day over for Footballguys, and one of the big things that just like really hit me as I'm talking about my mom. She's a single mom, just me and her, my whole life, and man, she was so instrumental in getting me to go to these games. And I was all about Batman and Power Rangers and Star Wars and all my toys that I could have. And then finally shipped me to a baseball game. And I'm not the biggest baseball fan anymore, but just the ambiance of being there in the stadium and being by first base and talking to a player and seeing all that, it was phenomenal. And so she got me out to every game she could, whether it was Marlins World Series, the Heat playoffs. Her company gave her these like cool training camp VIP passes for the Miami Dolphins locker room that we got to go in. And I was like 10 years old. And I just remember losing my mind seeing the players there. And she was always making sure. It was mostly because she was working late, but she always made sure that I was in every single sport after school because it was basically free daycare, free aftercare once the bell rang. And so she was like, "Yeah, you're going to play everything. You're playing soccer, baseball, basketball, football, all of it. You're playing everything."
Shout out mom. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Like strong moms getting you involved in sports. I love it. That's kind of my story too. Not, kind of my mom was a big fan too of sports growing up. So I kind of got into basketball at an early age. So yeah, we love football now, but roots, baby. All right. So do you have a favorite moment from any of those experiences you had watching sports when you were a child?
Oh, that's a really good one. They've kind of all started to like mush together. Um, Oh, I know I'm not that much of a baseball fan anymore, but I would just say, those first times that I got to be down by first base, where the Marlins used to play. It was called Joe Robbie Stadium at the time. That's where the Dolphins play now at Hard Rock. And the company my mom worked for, they would have these basically like the high roller tickets that they would give to clients, right? Let's impress them. Let's take them out to a sporting event, right? Sometimes there would be no client to take out, and they'd be like, "All right, let's pull them out and let's give them to an employee." And they gave them to her, and she took me down to what's called like the founder's box, and being down there and being steps. I'm talking 15 feet away from players and them coming over and signing your shirt and signing your baseball and giving you, another baseball and catching. And it was that moment for me where anything that maybe a kid would see on TV or something like that, it just became so real. It became real life. And it was one of those moments that I think for my mom, I don't know if there's anything quite like that. I'm not a parent yet, so I've never gotten to experience that. But for her, just to see the joy on this little, 4 or 5-year-old boy's face, it was just phenomenal. And for me, like I still remember that joy, that feeling of these people that were larger than life, that were so talented, that were so famous, so popular, coming up to me and handing me a baseball and signing it. And it was just, I can't even remember which player it was, but the rush of all of it, it still lives in there.
I love that. That is great. Yeah, having those memories from growing up, always great to be able to associate sports, something like that. It's great times. But when you were growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, that changed like every couple months. um, oh man, it changed from everything. I think like at one point I wanted to be a doctor, and then I realized how much math was in that, and I'm like, I suck at math, so let's move on from that. And then I think it was like my mom had said, "Oh, you should be a lawyer." I think it's like every parent says, like doctor, lawyer, architect, like all these different things. And I realized how much schooling that was. But I remember like at one point I wanted to be an agent, a sports agent, right, and be an agent for the players. And then realizing how much schooling that was, I moved on from that. And then it was just, you know what? I'm waking up and watching ESPN every single day. I'm watching Sports Center. And I had reached a point where I said, I want to be like one of those guys. I can do that. And, being, I was only child, single mother growing up, what happens is when you age out of being able to go to the kids' summer camp, and you're too old to go to summer camp, but not old enough to drive anywhere and do anything cool. And mom is at work all day. You're just like, oh, cool. I have to sit around the house for the entire day for basically 2.5 months. Sports radio became my best friend. And I would just throw that on and listen to all the shows all throughout the day, talking about my favorite teams. And I kind of knew I wanted to do something in sports media. And it's been a weird, long, winding road where I think I took a million different stops to even just get to where I am. But I think that passion was there from a young age, and it was something I always wanted to do. And it's kind of crazy to sit here and reflect on that and be like, wow, even at this small stage, I'm really lucky and fortunate to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. And when you graduated from high school and went on to college and everything, what was your plan there? Why did you go to school, and what exactly were you studying?
I would love to say I had it all figured out, but I had absolutely no idea. I had no idea. I went into college at FIU, Florida International University, go Panthers, here in Miami, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, so I think I had put down business management as my major. It had no prereqs, so I was just like, all right, cool. I could just take all the basic classes and I'll figure out what I want to do. Thought I still might do law school. I kind of entertained that a little bit, and just like, no, I really don't want to do that. And I went and I ended up doing sports management. And it was cool because I got to learn like every little side of it. I got to do like sports law. And I still remember us doing a whole thing on, would the reasonable and prudent person be reaching over the railing to catch a field goal that goes through and they fall down? Is it their fault or is it the stadium's fault? And I'm just like, this is nuts. Like I've never sat here and thought about this. So going into school was, I would love to say I had it all figured out. I didn't study anything with journalism. I just did sports management, and it was essentially how to run facilities, how to run organizations, proper marketing, things like that. And with that, I had to do an internship, and that internship led me to FIU football. Because as a kid growing up, I was like one of the weird teenagers that was obsessed with the NFL draft. Absolutely obsessed. I would sit there and I would be doing mock drafts straight off of memory. Because this was like back in the Disney when we did not have smartphones, like, in our pockets, and there was no kids bringing tablets to school. I was just writing it down on wide ruled paper, and I was obsessed with scouting players. And it was something I always wanted to do. And I had learned a little bit over the years, and then I applied for an internship there because it went with my sports management degree. I started doing that, and after I interned for a little bit, I got to actually be a scout in college football and do that for a year, and that was just one of the coolest experiences ever.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. I can't even imagine like that is dope. That is dope. So
Yeah.
when you were when you were scouting and doing all that, was there ever a player that like kind of stuck out to you as like and then ended up doing something with it?
So yeah, I'm glad you asked this because there's always the feather in my cap. I remember being assigned, this was like at the end of my internship where they were deciding if they wanted to hire me. And it was kind of like their test. They're like, here's a packet of like something ridiculous, like 500 players. And they're like, go home over break and come back with as many of these filled out as possible. And I don't think they were expecting me to do reports on all of them. Some of these were like landmines where the player was not good and you're supposed to not like them. And some of them were really good players and you're kind of supposed to understand that our school is not going to get a 5-star recruit. And then there's all the other guys in the middle. And they wanted to see, like, did my reports match kind of what they had? And I remember that there was a player that I wrote down on my list, and I got it back to the director of player personnel and to the coaching staff. And it was Jonnu Smith, the tight end right now for the Miami Dolphins, who's bounced around the league.
Yeah.
And I remember writing up a report on him and being like, this kid, he's a little underweight, but I think he can gain weight and be a good tight end. And it did the whole report there. And they're like, yeah, we like this kid as well. And they're like, okay, cool. Well, you got to do this report. You liked him. You've been a freshman orientation leader in the past. Where like I've done some things with like the freshman kids coming into FIU, so I knew the campus really well. But like, we want you to do a guided tour for when he and other players come to campus. So I got to do that, and it was such a cool experience. And I think I was talking with JJ Zacharyson the other day, and kind of realized like, oh damn, I'm the reason for like everyone being mad at Kyle Pitts and Arthur Smith is just John just taking away touchdowns. Like that's my bad. But it's always the cool thing that I try to look back at. And I really just loved my time and appreciated my time at that school. It was their best years of football they've ever had, and going to bowl games and all that. It was so cool.
Yeah, that sounds like a great experience. And Jonnu Smith, like, yeah, that's a name that I have probably still on a bunch of rosters. Like, he's a solid dude, I love that
Yeah.
dude. So it's great to see, and it's great to see that he's still in the league doing work, stealing touchdowns and doing all that stuff. So, okay, so let's talk about fantasy football, like not so much actual fantasy football talk. We're actually going to talk about how you got started playing fantasy. Like, how did that come into your life?
I think like most people, it was basically me and my high school buddies were realizing, oh man, we're all going to be going to different schools. Let's do something that's going to keep us in touch. And fantasy football became an easy thing for us to do. Then, my next jobs that I had out of college, there was always the join the office fantasy football league. And then in college, I was in a fraternity, and it was, hey, let's join the fraternity fantasy football league. And like before I knew it, I went from never playing and only just playing football, not playing fantasy football, but I played football for years, to all of a sudden I'm in like 6-7 leagues, and I am really loving this because it mirrored so much of what I wanted to do, of like actually being an NFL GM, scouting players, who's going to have the best season, are they the best fit for this team. And I remember being really good at it, and then getting really into the idea that, ooh, I can negotiate trades. Okay, this is awesome. And just like I was smitten by this idea that I could be the smartest GM in the room. By the way, not everybody likes that guy when you go to make a trade with him. So yeah, don't be that guy. But yeah, it just became something really fun where it became the annual tradition with me and my college buddies, where we would do an annual trip where all of us would go out to a cabin in the mountains, and we would do something cool like hiking or whitewater rafting, mountain biking. And then the big event of the weekend was we'd play sports in the morning, come back, and do our fantasy football draft auction style. And it would be like this 3-hour thing, everybody with a beer in their hand, everyone, cursing out at one another and screaming like, you took my guy, or, oh, that's a great value. Like, it just became the common thing every year. And it was just such a fun event for us that I think for most people, and this is what happens, is it really transcended football. It transcended the game. It was more of just creating memories with people that you loved and you wanted to be with. And the more I did it, the more I realized, the more I play this game, I'm cultivating relationships, and it just became something so much more than a game.
That makes me so jealous. Like, that whole setup sounds great. I wish I had people in my life who wanted to do something like that.
Well, now we all
Lucky.
got old, and we're not doing the trip anymore because
Yeah.
everyone's got babies, or they're married, or they've moved really far. But maybe we'll get it back on the books.
Yeah, I love talking about live drafts because we have one still, but COVID took a kind of on
Yeah.
that whole situation. So, like, and people moving and all of that other stuff. When people move, it's like, okay, we can try, doing a Zoom call or something like that. But yeah, it's hectic. So,
Yeah.
but live drafts are so much fun. And for people who haven't done a live draft before, why do you think that they should try to attempt to do one? Or do you think, that's something that leagues should try to do if they can?
man, like the atmosphere is just unmatched. It's kind of like the difference between going to the movie theater versus streaming something on your TV at home. You kinda get the same thing, but not really, like, it's not the same experience. Like, if I was to go to watch Dune 2 on my TV here at home, it's not the same as going and watching it in IMAX, and that's kind of what, like, drafting in person is like. It's kind of like doing your draft in IMAX. You've got your friends everywhere, you guys are trash talking one another, you're super excited to go run up and put your sticker, you're making it very dramatic, you got people screaming at you that you took your guy, whatever it is, and there's always you don't get that connection when you guys are all online. There's always someone they're all using the same rankings that are in that online system
Mhm.
versus, you'll get one person who shows up with just a printed cheat sheet, another guy who walks in with a magazine that's 2 months dated. Another person who's like, I don't even need it. I know all these players off the top of my head. And then there's the one guy that has like a laptop, an iPad, and something else all set up. And it's just like, oh wow, we're all really drafting a different draft today. But it's just the experience is unlike any other. I think that's the best example I can give. Like streaming at home versus going to see something in IMAX. It's just totally different.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, for sure. So, do you remember that first draft that you did, like how it went? Maybe not specific players, but do you remember how that first draft was for you?
Yes. I remember I was at my friend's house here who I grew up with. And um man, I remember I think I had like Marshawn Lynch on that team, AJ Green, and someone else who really blew up that season. And that was like my first real taste of it. And then the next year it was with the college buddies. And I remember ending up with Le'Veon Bell on that team who broke out and then trading for rookie Odell Beckham Jr. who hadn't done anything. But I was like, man, once he gets in the field, though, he's going to have great opportunity. Traded for him. And I remember like trading away, what was it? Reggie Bush and Vernon Davis. And people be like, what? Those guys are stars. And now I'm just a guy naming dudes at this point. But man, it's just you did it to me right now. Like you asked me to name that draft and you just go back, and I think that kind of epitomizes what those drafts do, and what like they become core memories that are lodged in there
Yeah,
forever. That whether you won the league or not, you had so much fun doing it, and those are just the experiences that you can't really replicate anywhere else.
for sure. Yeah. So, do you have a favorite type of league to play in?
Ooh, it depends on what year we're talking. If this was like 2 years ago, I was all in on Dynasty. And I think recently I was not straight away from Dynasty. I mean, they're still really fun to do. And I love doing that because you could have a maintained connection with people. But I think your league needs to be active. Like being in a Dynasty league where people aren't active year round kind of sucks. And I
Mhm.
think that becomes some of the turnoff to it. Um, if I had to really pick a preference, I would probably say it's Dynasty just because it's so much fun. But I think that nothing quite if we're talking league, it's Dynasty, but if we're talking about the year to year thing, I love the environment of a redraft live draft in person where everyone's picking someone for just that year. There's not too much of that like crazy dissenting opinions of like, oh, this guy's gonna be really good in 3 years. Like, no, it's everyone going in there with the same thing in mind and really duking it out. And that to me, a redraft live draft is the funnest experience in all of fantasy football. But the dynasty leagues where you create those relationships and you keep it going for 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it is. I can only imagine. I'm not there yet. I think I've had a couple leagues that have been going for 3 years, but um, it just feels like that's where you want to be when you're playing fantasy football. It's just in a dynasty league with people that you've been with forever.
Yeah, for sure. So, is there a setting or anything that you're not a fan of, or are you pretty comfortable with everything or pretty cool with everything?
I'm pretty comfortable with everything. I always kind of laugh when it's funny, like, Jagger May, who you had on recently, like, he always uses the term "the normies," like, the people who just, like, who are you don't wanna say, like, casual about fantasy football, but they're not, diehards where they're studying it all year round. They show up for their draft and they do their thing. But my home league with some of my college buddies, I remember I suggested Superflex to them, and they thought that was the most heinous idea ever to have 2 quarterback. One of the guys was like, "That's not how they do it in the NFL. The NFL is 1 quarterback. We're doing this." I'm just like, dude, the NFL also doesn't give you points for every time a player catches the pass. Like this is not the same thing. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that I have any specific type that I don't like. It's been really fun going into like Scott Fishbowl and seeing the new settings every single year and all that. I think it adds a fun wrinkle to the game every single time. So there's not one that I dislike. I'm an equal opportunity fantasy settings guy.
Okay, well, let's move into content creation. A lot of people listen to this show because they are putting out content. They want to put out more content. They're trying to get involved in putting out content, and they're just kind of looking for some advice and listen to other people's stories. But when did you first decide, like, I want to put out fantasy football content, and how did that come about?
Um, so I actually done this a couple times where my first job out of college was actually, I mean, aside from the scouting, after that it was radio, and I got into sports radio, and I did that for about a year and a half, and I just realized it wasn't the environment for me. Didn't want to be in it. Moved on. But I always had that itch to go back to doing something where I could talk into a microphone and speak about something that I enjoyed, something I was passionate about. And I quickly learned that it doesn't matter necessarily how passionate you are about something. Sometimes that's just not enough. Sometimes you have to do, not sometimes, you have to do everything that you can to make sure that the quality of what you're putting out is very good. And I remember that I started this idea for a podcast where I spend way too much money on equipment. And I set up one of those like plastic folding tables in my office, and it brought over 3 friends, and the 4 of us sat around this table recording a podcast. And by God, was it awful. Like it was just terrible, man. Like it was not what I thought it was going to be. And I thought, you know what, maybe this just isn't for me. Stepped out of that and decided I wanted to try to get back into it one more time. And I did a recording with the person who's one of my best friends and eventually became a co-host of mine when I started doing my own show, Dr. Vignesh Doraiswamy. And he joined me on the Pretend GM show that I ended up doing. And he and I would kind of go back and forth where we did this dynasty show where my angle of it was talking about the scouting of these rookies and young players, and his was talking about the medicine of these players that were coming back from injuries. And so we thought that we were bringing angles that people hadn't necessarily heard too much of, and how can we make it entertaining? And so we did the Pretend GM podcast for a little while, and started guesting on other people's shows, started getting other people to come onto my show. And that was kind of the big thing, is just you have to put content out there. That's the hardest thing for people to do, is just to start. I always tell everybody that, like, just start. You're not going to be ready. It's kind of like having a kid. Like, you're never going to be ready, but just if you want to do it, you do it. And I promise you'll figure it out along the way. The tough thing though, is the people who don't try to improve with every single step. And to me, that was the thing for me, was every episode I did, I wanted to improve at something. Could I improve my audio quality? Could I do a better job of introing the show and the topic? Could I do a better job of transitioning from one thing to the next? Could we get better cameras? Like, what could we do every single time that was improving this? And that's where my mindset was every time.
And when you first started podcasting, had you had experience in front of the camera or behind a microphone? Like, what was your thought process going into it if you hadn't?
So I had limited experience behind the microphone, because I had been in radio and I was a producer basically behind the glass. Like, I'm the guy that chimes in once every every little while. And I had like a little segment where I would read people's text messages to the show, and it was cool. Like, it was a really cool thing where I'd get about like 9 minutes on air in the local Miami sports radio. That was great. So I had a little bit of experience with being on the microphone. I had never been on camera though. And it was a definite learning curve. I would be looking away, looking down, staring at the camera too hard. There was a million, and then trying to figure out, like, how can I read all my notes? I had these notes. And then I kind of turned into like a little bit of a Ron Burgundy, where anything that was on the notes, I would read. And I think it's just, you have to get those reps. You have to do it more and more and more to get better at something, get more comfortable with it. I almost think of it like doing a podcast. It's kind of like golf. Like, there's very few, if not no, people that are actually good when they go play it the first time, and you have to get more reps. And every time you do those reps, make sure you're getting better at the technique that you're using. If not, you're just going to keep practicing doing something wrong. And that's how I look at the podcast game as well. And what we're doing with video, it's something I try to live my life by, this concept called Kaizen. And it's to be improving in every single aspect of your life. And it's something that I picked up in running my former business where I owned a kickboxing gym. And it was something where it's just improving in whether it's business, relationships, personal goals, whatever it may be, get 1% better each day. And I don't think I listened to that enough when I was a kid and coaches would say that in practice, like, let's get a little bit better each day. It was always so corny. And now I'm just like, you know what? That's really what I need to be doing.
Were there any setbacks or any kind of obstacles that got in your way when you first started? Something that maybe if you would have known then what you know now, like it would have been ideal?
I would say probably from a logistical standpoint, it was making sure this sounds so stupid when I say it out loud now. Making sure that I had good lighting. Like that was the first thing. I remember thinking I needed to invest in these these $1,000 cameras and stuff like that. I use my cell phone. Like I use my cell phone as my webcam now for my show with Footballguys. But investing in good lighting was such a big thing for me early in podcasting and doing video. And then you talk about like what was kind of the hurdle from a non-logistical standpoint. It was understanding that not everyone is going to like you, and that is okay. Like that is okay. And it's, I think the important thing for us to remember as content creators is that you are going to cultivate an audience by the persona you put out there. So if you're a person who is constantly trying to create outrage and get like, oh, I'm going to get these angry people clicking on this and I'm going to get them commenting. And it's just like, those are going to be the people that continue to watch and listen to your stuff is angry people. And, you start to almost build a persona that's fake. Whereas I kind of just wanted to be genuine and be me. And that didn't work for everybody. And I remember early on in the process, I think I asked a fellow content creator for their opinion on something because they said they'd be happy to give out, advice to people starting in the industry. I was like, great. And I sent them the video and they were like, yeah, this is very forgettable. It's not for me. And I remember being really disappointed at that time and it was just crushed me. And I was just like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And the more I got back out there, I realized like, maybe I'm just not for him. I'm not for that person. And then more and more people would tell me how much they enjoyed the content. And so if there's anything that someone can get from like what I'm saying from all this is that you're not going to be for everyone and you can't let every little comment or criticism get to you. Mm-hmm. It's something that you can take and you can understand and try to get better at it. And I think just from hearing that one critique from that one person, it helped me say, well, what can I do to make sure that I'm remembered every time I'm on camera while still being true to myself, right? And so it didn't necessarily mean I needed to stop doing what I was doing or that I wasn't talented enough to do it. It was just, how could I get better from that? And I think that's something it's tough. Like it's not found in everyone, the ability to kind of take criticism and say, okay, I can get better from this and use it strategically to improve themselves.
When you first started, how were you going about getting your content out there, getting podcast out there and building an audience?
Oh my God. It was just learning as doing. It was just, it was horrible. I remember posting stuff. I go back now and I run a lot of the most of the stuff for the Footballguys YouTube channels. And we have 3 of them now, by the way, quick plug. YouTube.com/FootballGuysFantasy, YouTube.com/FootballGuysDynasty, and YouTube.com/TheAudible. Go and subscribe to all 3 of those. But yeah, when I started, I had no idea how to make titles. I had no idea how to make thumbnails. I was really struggling with all those things and I had to sit there and learn because I was like, if I don't learn, I'm never going to get noticed. And if I don't, communicate with people on Twitter or social media in general, and no one's going to know who I am. And then I started thinking, I got to put videos on Twitter. These videos that are in YouTube, maybe not everyone's going to get to them on YouTube, but if I can put them on Twitter and get those circulating around, people might start to recognize my face or my voice or my name. And it just started to create those relationships. And then I would just say, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to be shy about this anymore. I'm going to do a mock draft and I'm going to go invite some people in the industry and see if they're just willing to jump it. And, like I remember Dave, actually my co-host, like that's how he and I met. Was I saw that he was doing stuff in the industry and I was like, hey man, do you want to jump into a mock draft? I said, sure. And then he and I, after that, like we didn't talk again for months and we really didn't talk much at all. And it wasn't really until I was working at Footballguys that, now we're forced to talk every day, which is awful. But it's one of those things where it's just kind of figuring out as I went. And I tried to be as strategic as possible and create a good plan for everything I was doing. But at the same time, I was learning so much along the way. And that made it really tough. I think I was using Audible or something for putting up the podcast. I can't remember what it was. And I just remember tracking the numbers every single time that I was doing an episode. And it wasn't until eventually I think I was on Twitter and I pulled the desperation move where someone was talking about who's your dream podcast guest. And I commented, at Late Round QB would be the dream guest. And then he's like, hey man, I just shot you a DM. And I was like, oh my God, it's Zach Grayson. And he came on the show and he shot that out and retweeted it. And all of a sudden the audience began to grow. And it went from JJ to Pat Fitzmaurice to just more and more people in the industry I started to meet and bring on the show. And all those people could not have been kinder to me. And I would ask them, hey, you've been doing this for a while. What advice do you have? And a lot of them would tell me like, hey man, you're actually pretty good. There's not much advice I have. Just keep doing your thing and keep getting those reps. And I think that's another thing that was really important for me to realize. It's like, this stuff does not happen overnight. If you're working hard to do something in the industry, it does not happen overnight. It took quite a bit of time for me. And, I'm sure other people might even look and say like, hey man, it didn't take you much time at all to get into the industry and doing what you're doing. The timelines are going to be different for everybody. But, I think the important thing is just to keep doing what you're doing, keep improving with every single rep that you get.
Hey everyone, Kacey Kasem here. I want to take a moment to tell you about Sunday Dreamers Club, my fantasy football inspired t-shirt store. If you're looking for unique, stylish, and comfortable apparel that showcases your love for fantasy football, look no further than SundayDreamersClub.com. Whether you're gearing up for the next big game, hosting a draft party, or just want to sport some awesome gear, Sunday Dreamers Club has got you covered. With a variety of designs and styles to choose from, there's something for every fantasy football fan out there. Your support means the world to me, and there are so many ways you can help me grow this new small business. Grab a shirt or two for yourself or as a gift for your fantasy football league mates, or you can spread the word to your friends and family. Every bit helps, and I truly appreciate your support. Thanks for listening, and now let's get back to the show. 100%. Like, learning so much stuff, just putting out content. You have to learn how to do all this stuff, edit a podcast and publish a podcast. Like, that's a lot to wrap your mind around when you're first getting started, like, for real. So I totally get that. And it is a journey. It's a journey and it's a struggle sometimes, but
there's days where it's like, you kind of tell yourself, okay, I should just stop doing this. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, this is not getting traction like I want it to. And, and then all of a sudden a week later, something good happens and you go, oh, well, thank God I didn't stop. And, it's just those, you'll get that one DM from someone or that one email or that, that one thing that just really changes your trajectory. And that's happened to me a couple times. Like, there was a few times where I was like, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm not good enough. And I would get that one encouraging message. Hey, we'd love to have you come on our show. Hey, you do such a great job. Like, you inspire me. I'd love to meet you at the expo. Just every little thing. So it's just, I can't say enough good things about people in the industry wanting to actually help and wanting to actually see others succeed. I know it's not the case all the time, but when, like, it's very similar to what I said about audiences. You're going to cultivate the people around you in the industry that, with the vibes that you put out. So if you're that person that's arguing with everyone on Twitter, I got to tell you, you're probably not going to have too many supporters in your corner. But if you're the nice person online, you're the nice person in person, you're more likely to have a lot of nice people around you that want to help you. And I found that to be very important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll tell my friends about like how I'm like my real life friends, right? The people I see around here, and I'm like, yeah, my friends in the industry, this, that, and the other. And a lot of times they're like, well, isn't that your competition? How are you friends with these people? And blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, it's not competition. Like, we all bring our own thing to this world. And like, I
promise there's enough eyes and ears everywhere. Yes. There's enough people to make content. Like, people are not your competition.
No. In finding a good audience, finding those people that really enjoy what you're putting out and like building those kind of connections with your audience is super important when you're podcasting, when you're putting out content in general. And we'll get into the expo and everything like you brought up. And that's a fun spot to talk about when it comes to networking, making friends and all that stuff. But you brought up Footballguys. Obviously,
Yeah.
like Footballguys is one of those brands that, I mean, it's one of the gold standards when it comes to fantasy football content. I love it. And it's been around forever. I remember when I first started playing and really getting into it, like going to Footballguys and just being like, oh, these are my people. All right. So how did that come about? How did you start working with Footballguys?
So I remember after I had, not many people know this. This will probably be the first time I say this live on air somewhere. But I remember that when I was first getting started in the industry, I hadn't been around too long. I was still very green, and I understood that. When Fantasy Pros as a company was going through a change, they were looking for new staffers, and they brought me onto a show as a guest. And I kind of knew it was an audition, but it was never really said that it was an audition. And I was very politely told that I would be the odd man out in that scenario. And they're very happy with where they went, and I'm very happy for them. Like, I have no ill will. Like, those guys are great over there. I'm good friends with the guys who did get selected. You know, Andrew Erickson, Derek Brown, the people that are on the show over there. And I remember I was talking to someone about it. I was like, yeah, you know, it kind of sucks. Like, I didn't get the job that I was going for. But, you know, that person just kind of reminded me, like, you got an audition for a major company after being in the industry for like a year and a half. Shut up. Like, you have so much going for you right now. And you know, like, that word kind of got around from one person to the next. And that's when Dave Kluge reached out to me, and he's like, hey man, are you looking for full-time work? And that's the thing that most people don't do, is no one knows that someone's looking for full-time work or even part-time work. We don't do a great job of advertising ourselves all the time. And he's like, hey man, I think, you know, we could probably find you something part-time over at Footballguys and just like get you doing anything for us. Even just recording a video, you're great at that. Why don't you meet with, you know, the man in charge, with Joe Bryant? I did that. Joe had looked at my show that I had been doing, the Pretend GM, which was my own independent thing that I had been doing with Vignesh. And he's like, you know, this looks great. Who does all your graphics and stuff? And I was like, me. And he's like, well, who edits your videos? Me. And he was just like, okay, well, how are you guys getting this on Twitter and social? And I was like, me. And he's like, okay, so we have a lot of uses for you. And it just became a thing where I got the opportunity to start making some videos for Footballguys, and I would edit and cut up everything and post it. And what was kind of funny at the time when I started was not that there wasn't a concerted effort to YouTube, but there were a lot of, let's just say there was a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? And everyone was kind of preparing their own meals. And when they told me you can post your videos, I did it and I posted it. And all of a sudden, my videos that had never been on this channel before were getting a few thousand views, which was not common on our channel, and getting new subscribers. And it got noticed after like 4 or 5 of them were very successful. And like, what are you doing different? I was like, well, like, I had my own channel. I had to learn how to do YouTube SEO. And they're like, oh, okay. So that kind of turned into a thing where it's like, well, maybe you can help us out with that. And little by little, that like part-timer just making some content turned into, you're a part-timer making content, but you're also consulting us for this. And then it turned into, well, you're going to be part-timer, but you're going to be getting more hours on the week and more of this. And then eventually that turned into a full-time thing. And it took time, but I mean, it was the one thing that I noticed was, what other value can you bring besides just being a face that talks into a microphone, right? Like, there's so much more to it. There's tons of people that think they can make it just by talking into a microphone, and that's not it. You actually have to bring something that's a bit more valuable to the table, to whatever company you're going to be with, because there are very few people in this industry, even some of the biggest names, you'd be surprised at how much they are doing behind the scenes that we just don't know about. There's not a lot of people that are doing one thing for that company.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's been a common occurrence on this, a common theme on this podcast, is people saying, yeah, you need to kind of be a, you know, you need to have multiple things that you're good at. Like being able to, you just do nowadays. Like, and the fact also is people don't realize that there's so many jobs in the fantasy football industry. I don't want to say so many jobs, but there are jobs in the fantasy football industry that are behind the scenes that have nothing to do with being on camera or
Yep.
talking into a microphone. Like, got to help make the program run, So definitely, like, you brought up SEO,
Mhm.
and I've been talking to a lot of people about SEO, and now that I'm getting back into writing, like, I'm having a lot of editors talk to me about SEO and kind of tell me, like, this is what you need to be doing to, move it up on the search engines and move it up in YouTube and everything. How did you learn, like, the basics of SEO, and, like, what have you taken from what you've learned to grow?
So I think that, like my weird journey to getting to fantasy football content, I feel like I had to stop along my career path that meant something to me where I learned a new skill at every stop. So, like doing the football scouting, I got a better understanding of football and how to evaluate players. Then I go to radio, I got a better understanding of media and what made for entertaining content. Then after that, I'm working in business. I'm doing marketing and sales and stuff like that. And I really needed to learn the let's say the ins and outs of, I don't want to say psychology overall, but it's like how to present something nicer than it is and how to present something where someone desires that product or that object or that service. And so that really helped me learn a bit more. I started to focus on graphics there, and I was posting Facebook ads and figuring out what titles worked there and what graphics stood out to people, what got better click rates. And then eventually I went to owning my own business, which was a kickboxing gym, and I had to run all of my ads for that, and I was selling memberships and I was training new people and I was doing something that was front facing where I was face to face with customers, selling them on a gym membership and training them and making sure that they felt welcome. And so at each one of these stops, I kind of gained something new. And SEO was one of those things that I gained through all the advertising I had to do, through the sales I had to do, and really understanding what are people looking for. And I mean, most people are simply looking for results. They want what they want, and society is a lot simpler than we make it out to be. I That sounds so depressing when I say that out loud, but it is true. Like we just want what we want, and
Mhm.
I think what most people want is convenience. They want something that is going to be engaging and convenient and simple and easy. And I think that's a big reason why we see people, not to go back to this example, but it's a big reason why we see people not going to the movie theaters. They could just stream something from at home and they don't have to go anywhere. It's simple,
Mhm.
easy, convenient. And learning, how to properly, and this wasn't something like, oh, I just took everything from my past and, and Slumdog Millionaire did into becoming this SEO expert. Like I had to learn a lot. Like I took courses, I watched videos, I read articles, I started using online tools. There were so many, I've met with people that know SEO pretty well, whether it's been from the YouTube side, podcast side, whatever it is. And that's what's given me the confidence now for us to go and create 3 separate channels over at Footballguys for YouTube, because we realized like, hey, we are basically trying to force feed this audience 3 different types of food. And it's like we keep serving up steak to vegans, and it's like, well, they don't want to eat it, man. So we got to make sure that we can split this up and get the right content to the right audiences. And that's been a really cool undertaking to start with. And um, I got to say, like, it's weird because I hated doing it in school and I hated doing it in college. But man, now that I'm an adult and I'm like feeling like I'm trying to catch up, I love learning. I
Yeah.
love learning. I avoided learning as much as I could when I was a kid. I just wanted to do anything else but learn. And now that I'm an adult and I'm like, oh crap, I need skills. I need to know how
Mhm.
to do stuff. I am constantly learning something. So it's just, I think it keeps you sharp in whatever you're doing, whether it's in front of a camera or behind the scenes. The learning and especially SEO has just been invaluable to me.
Yeah, everybody keeps coming on here and saying that, and I'm like starting to look into courses and starting to look into, you know, YouTube videos that teach about it and all this other stuff. And, then you get those YouTube videos that say SEO's dead. And I'm like, I'm not clicking on that because every time I bring that up, everybody has the same expression. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it's dead at all. And it's really interesting to see, like, oh, you're trying too hard to sound smart. Like, you should have, break your sentences down into smaller sentences, make smaller paragraphs, do this, do that.
Yep.
Headings need to be a certain way. I'm like, okay, writing this stuff down. Gotta learn, gotta learn. So it's really awesome, and it's really, really awesome that you guys broke it into separate channels because, yeah, sometimes you do go on somewhere and you're like, that doesn't apply to like me. So
Right.
why are you giving me this information? I don't want it.
Well, I mean, the first thing we noticed is that, the Audible with, Sigmund Bloom and Cecil Lammey, those guys are
Mhm.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
They've been doing their show for 18 years.
That's
Their show
oof.
could legally join the military. But, like, Dave and I have been doing our show for a year. So, most people it's kinda like doing the whole new saga of Star Wars. Like, people love the originals, and then you bring out some new stuff, and they're
Yeah,
like, Not for us, not for me."
right.
But you do get a whole new fan base, and, even just the simple things of seeing, like, okay, the age difference between our YouTube channels now is totally different. Most of our subscribers are now below the age of 44, whereas in the other channel, it'd say that roughly 50% of our subscribers were above the age of 44. And so there's a lot of times where you just I'm not trying to make it sound too simple. It's not that simple. But there are just times where you kind of have to go where your audience is.
Mhm.
I can't remember. Joe Bryant talks about this all the time. I think it's like the Waffle House thing, where like Waffle House always put themselves next to the highway or something like that, so that it could always be seen. Like go to where your clients are, as opposed to making them look for you. And so for us branching out to these new channels where we can cultivate that audience, is just really helpful for us so far.
And do you use other social media besides, the YouTube and Twitter? What else do you guys, use when you're putting out content with Football Guys?
I know that. I mean, we also have the Football Guys Instagram, Facebook, kinda, not quite the same
It's where
anymore.
those 44 and up are hanging
Yep,
out,
yep,
so
yep.
I'll be
I
there
didn't say
soon, so
that.
that's okay.
I didn't say that. But yeah, I mean, those are pretty much the place. I mean, we have our Discord channel as well. That's been, very valuable to have because those are going to be some of your most loyal people that want to talk every day about stuff. So, um, yeah, I mean, I don't think enough people realize how big YouTube is getting, and like how much it can change your content, because podcast is fine. It can be found,
Mhm,
but YouTube actually actively goes out to look for audience members for your show. It's if I'm not mistaken, YouTube is a division of Google, or it's in partnership with Google. So YouTube is very much results driven. They want their
mhm,
users to find results. Now the difference is Google wants you to find results fast and get to where you're going. YouTube wants you to find results and stay there. So now you
mhm,
have to be able to do two things. You have to be able to be found, and then you have to have good enough content that people want to stick around for more than one video, or more than 20 minutes, more than 30 minutes. So it's there's like these little like ebbs and flows of it. But YouTube for people, I would say, is just it's incredibly important. I Social media is fine. Everyone is searching for that weird golden goose on social media, which is going viral.
yeah.
I promise you, it does not happen often, guys. Like it rarely happens, especially with fantasy football content. There is just not
Yeah.
enough people that care about fantasy football content for your stuff to go viral. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's learning these skills for SEO of YouTube. It's just it's been phenomenal. It's been extremely invaluable for me.
Really, really, really need to get on this YouTube train that everybody's on.
I'm
I'm way
saying,
too late to the party, but, like, it's just little old me, and I'm a little
I get
scaredy
it.
cat when it comes to, like it took me this long to figure out how to do a podcast, and now I'm like, "Oh, and then video and editing and all that stuff." I'm like, "Oh, man. Oh, man. One day, maybe. One day. No, we'll get there, we'll get there.
We got to
It's
get
gonna
you on
take
there.
some time." Yeah, it takes some time. I was on YouTube, like, 14 years ago posting videos from concerts and stuff. So like, I'm sure it hasn't changed that much. Uh,
No, not at all. The exact same stuff we were watching 14 years ago.
so okay, let's talk about the Fantasy Football Expo, because the fantasy football community as a whole, like A plus cool people,
Yeah.
going to the expo is like a whole different. It's just a magical time. I don't know how to describe it other than that, but yeah, how has your experience been going to the expo?
So my first time going to the expo, I was utterly terrified. terrified. And people are always surprised by this when I say it, because I'm on camera so often and I'm talking into a microphone so often. Uh, I can get really shy really fast, and I can get really quick social anxiety where like I'm just like I'm gonna go stand in the corner because this my social battery can drain really fast. When I have to be on, I can be on, and I can do a really good job of that. But that social battery drains really fast, and that's what I was very worried about at the expo. Um, I was also just nervous about, like, what if I meet someone that's important in the industry and I make myself look stupid? Like, you can't recover from that. Those first impressions are so important. And I remember just walking into, what is it, the Doubletree? Yeah, the
Yes.
Doubletree, right?
Uh-huh.
I remember walking in there, and within 2 minutes, someone from the bar came over and was like, "Pretend GM, Alfredo?" And I was like, Yes, you know who I am?" And like I was a nobody, I'm still nobody, but like I was even more nobody then. And I was just like, "Oh wow, we're all in this together." Like people are actually, supporting one another. And it was just really cool. Sat down, had a drink, and I definitely started to unwind a little bit more and just, get relaxed and realize like these were good people that we were around. And going to the expo with my buddy Vignesh is funny because he's kind of like a proud mom where he it's like the mom that thinks that they're helping, but they're really just making it more uncomfortable for you. And he does the same thing where he's like, "Oh, you gotta check out Alfredo's stuff, and he does so many great things, and he can do YouTube and graphics and this and that, and he's phenomenal. And he was a scout. And did you know he scouted John Smith?" And like he just goes on and on. And I'm like, "Oh my god, this is so embarrassing." And I remember the first year seeing Joe Bryant and him walking around with his white Vans that have the little football guys, Black Guy Joe logo on it that are like stitched into the shoes, and Vig being like, "You need to go talk to Joe Bryant. Like that's one of the legends in the industry." And I'm like, "Absolutely not, man. Like, what if I look stupid? Like, I can't go talk to him." And I remember it was like a very quick thing where Vig went up to him and said hi, and then I said hi, and it was just such like a short, maybe 10-second conversation. I was like, "Okay, bye." Like I was just very, very nervous, and um,
Man.
it ended up being the next year that I had showed up. I had already just been hired by Footballguys, so that was my first time seeing him again in person, and the conversation was totally different. Each year, I think I've gotten more and more comfortable, and it's gotten. I get uncomfortable with praise, and so it's been weird when I go there and someone's like, "I love your show. I'm such a big fan of yours," and I'm like, "That's odd to hear." Like I can just get, I kind of like turn into a shell and like I turtle and just get inside myself. Um, but it's been really cool to see how the experience has changed, how more people are going, how it's just becoming more and more fun each year. And I don't know, man, just to be in a space where you're around your people, where you're around a
Yeah.
bunch of people that actually genuinely care. It's really cool.
Had you met anybody from the fantasy football space prior to, going to the expo, and or was that your first experience meeting people?
That was my first experience meeting people. I think I had done maybe a recording or two with some people on screen, but like that's not the same.
No.
It's not the
No,
same
it's not.
whatsoever. Because you get there and all of a sudden that person who looks normal on screen is 6'5", or they're 5'1", or they're way more loud and excited in person than they ever were, on screen. And it's just a totally different dynamic. And um, it's funny, I was talking about it the other day. I still remember the first year I did the draft night out, and I was sitting next to Joey Wright, and I had totally forgotten that until he brought it up the other day. And he was like, "How did we meet?" "Oh yeah, it was at draft night out that first year." And it was just one of those things where I didn't think this stupid thing where I was just going to sit down and draft a team was going to mean much to me. But, now I've got this guy who's one of my absolute best friends in the industry and a coworker of mine who I work very close with. I mean, we got to become friends right out of the gate. Like the first time we sat down next to each other, and it was very unintentional. It was very low pressure. It was just fun. It was just hanging out and drafting a team. And I think that the expo can do that for a lot of people. It allows you an opportunity to let your guard down, not be so worried about if you look cool or not. Because trust me, none of us are cool. Like that's what it is. We talk about a game that other people play. We're not cool. Like we can all get that preconceived notion out of our head.
I love like meeting people in this industry, thinking back to like how I met them, because you're bringing that up, and that's how I met Derek Brown, was at a draft night out, like in Dallas when they had a fantasy football convention here. We drafted, and that like I stole Jamison Crowder from him, and that's just like an ongoing joke with us. Like, so it's just awesome, like to be able to meet people like that and then have these relationships, because I knew him when he was at the same, we were in the same area of follower accounts, and then of
Yeah.
course he blew us up, but that's my dude. So I also wanted to shout out Joe Bryant, like my little plug here. Go listen to
Yes.
his episode of this. It was a long time ago, but I'm sure it's still very relevant. He's a very, very, very awesome guy. So yeah, definitely check that out. But let's get back to like just talking about the community. Scott Fishbowl is a thing that's going on right now as
Yep.
well. Like that's a big, big deal for fantasy football. Like, and if you don't know what Scott Fishbowl is, go to scottfishbowl.com. It's super dope. I say that all the time. Always sounds like an advertisement for them, but it's a great, great thing. So, do you have a relationship with Scott Fishbowl? Have you been in it, and how has that gone for you?
Boy, do I. I have been in Scott Fishbowl. This is going to be my third year doing it, and I am actually hosting the Fort Lauderdale live draft for
Woo!
SFB 14. And we are nearly filled with both leagues. We have the Ace Ventura and Ray Finkel divisions in Fort Lauderdale. But we've got some really great people that have signed up to be in it. At some point here, I'll open it up and be able to look. But I mean, it's been such a cool event to be a part of. And I think I remember the first time hearing about it was listening to the ESPN Fantasy Focus and Matthew Berry talking about it. And I'm like, what in the hell is the Scott Fishbowl? That sounds cool. And then I think when I told you, like I did a podcast with my friends here at my house,
Mhm.
one of them, I remember them saying, oh man, if you make it a Scott Fishbowl, you've made it. Cause I hear Matthew Berry talking about that. That's huge. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, all right, let's try it out. And so I applied first year. I don't think I got in. Second year, I ended up getting it. And since then, it's just been so much fun, and meeting Scott and the work that they are doing, I think doesn't get talked about enough. I think we all love the fact that there's fun drafts, there's fun scoring settings, there's fun formats, it's fantasy football. These are all the things that we enjoy. The work that they do, that Fantasy Cares does to, help those that are less fortunate, and to I know that in the past I've always seen the videos of them going out and doing the Christmas shopping and getting gifts for kids. It's such a beautiful thing. I'm so fortunate to have never been in that scenario where I was, needed to be on the receiving end of something like that. But I cannot say enough good things about the work that Scott and his entire team at Fantasy Cares are doing. It's just, they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal. And it was a really easy decision for me to say, okay, I would love to host a live draft if I can.
Mhm.
And yeah, now we've got our Fort Lauderdale live draft. I was able to pull that up as I was talking here.
Yes.
We got a whole bunch of cool giveaways for people. If you have not, even if you're not in the draft, you could still show up to the event and just talk and hang out and get some beers. We are going to be at the 26 Degree Brewing Company, and that's in Pompano Beach, just about 10-15 minutes north of Fort Lauderdale. But we're giving away a Bob Greasy mini helmet signed, a Bob Greasy jersey signed, Tyreek Hill jersey, Jalen Waddle, Tua Tagovailoa. So many cool things here. And then let me see who we got some cool people in this. Where are they at? Sorry, I know dead air is awesome
No,
for
it's totally
a
fine.
podcast.
I
We
go
got
and edit all of this crap. All the dead air has to go somewhere.
we got Jordan Vanek, who's going to be joining us there. Sam Wagman. I'm seeing Thomas Schaefer on here, who's a producer over at CBS. And there's also some rumors swirling around that some of the guys from Fantasy Football Today with CBS are going to be showing up, because I know they're also in Fort Lauderdale as well. So we got a really good crew that's going to be joining us over there.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you brought up the live draft. Like I ran the Dallas one last year. We're doing it again this year. So that's it's a lot of fun. Are you
Yeah.
drafting at the draft, or are you not choosing not to do that?
So I've been told not, like, it's best when you don't, but I also don't listen to anybody.
Yeah.
So I will be drafting. We're gonna have 2 drafts, and so we'll do them back to back. And Joey Wright has agreed to drive down from Tampa to Fort Lauderdale, or excuse me, from Orlando to Fort Lauderdale. He'd kill me if I got the city wrong. From Orlando to Fort Lauderdale. Sorry, Joe. he's going to host one of the drafts, or I'll host the other draft. And we've even gotten some offers from some other people. We're seeing maybe Heath Cummings might actually host a draft for us as well, while Joey and I draft. So we're figuring it out. But yes, my intention is to go against what everyone has told me and still draft in the live draft this year.
Well, see, nobody told me anything when I did it last year. So I just drafted and I hosted it. And it was like, I could have done, I mean, I did it obviously, but I don't know. I didn't feel like I got to like spend as much time doing, but we had 4 drafts going all at the same time. So it's kind of hard. So
I have a little bit of experience with doing something similar. Remember when I told you that I used to do those annual drafts with my buddies on our trips? They were auctions. I was also the auctioneer. So I was running like the Excel spreadsheet and I'm doing the whole auctioneer thing, and like it was nuts, and then trying to draft at the same time. So I'm like maybe a little too overconfident that I can handle this. No
you'll be
problem.
fine. And Joey's there. So I mean, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Shout out, go listen to his episode after this too.
Famous last words. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. So, okay, what do you like to do when you have downtime? When you have some free time, what are the activities and stuff that you like to do?
Oh man, so I am a big nerd. If you can tell by like some of the stuff I have behind me, I am big into Batman and Star Wars and all things like superheroes, fantasy, sci-fi. I love that. So I'll read comics. I will watch animated stuff. I don't play video games too much anymore. I think I had a little streak there where I played some Helldivers 2 with a couple friends, and uh that the work immediately took over. So I don't find too much time for that. I really got into when I was owning my business, and I still go there now, is doing some kickboxing. And it's not like combat stuff. Like I'm not fighting. I would lose in a fight instantly. But this is more like hitting the bags and doing fitness related stuff. It's been great to stick with that. Growing up, I was let's just say I was a little chubby kid, and I think it was like around senior year when I was doing wrestling. I dropped like 45 pounds and never looked back, and never wanted to kind of go back to how I was before. And it just became a thing where my health and my fitness became part of my life. And I know that's how a lot of people end up saying it. It's kind of like people who do CrossFit and won't shut up about CrossFit. But like the health and fitness and just going and working out, it puts me in such a good mood. Like I haven't done it today, and I'm like, man, I probably should have worked out before the podcast. I'd be in an even better mood. But I'm recovering from being sick, so that's my built-in excuse. But yeah, I mean, that's just I try to find a lot of fun things. Me and my wife have 2 dogs, so I love taking our dogs for walks. We live in South Florida, so anytime we can go and enjoy the beaches and the beautiful weather that we have here. Sorry to rub that in everyone's face, but yeah, like that's something we love to do.
Yeah, I was gonna, bring up the weather and blah blah blah, but I'm not going to. I'm not gonna sound bitter on this podcast. Nah, not at all. Not being in Texas where the heat is already. They're like, oh, there's gonna be a heat warning today if your power goes out. That's why I'm like, seriously, it is.
Oh.
It is May. Calm down. So yeah,
The summers here are
yeah,
absolutely nuts. It's May 8th that we're recording this, and
yeah,
it just gets so hot outside, like 95, 96 degrees. The humidity is nuts.
yeah. That.
Like people always ask, like, you live in South Florida and you're half Cuban. Like, why are you so white, dude? Go outside and get a tan. And I'm just like, because I don't. I just go out and burn and melt, and it's awful. Like the heat here is insane. It's absolutely nuts.
I can, yeah, I'm definitely, yeah. I'm all white, 100% the whitest person you've seen. So like, it's too hot to go outside. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'll stay inside where the air conditioning is. That's just how I live my life. So, okay. So when you're working out, do you like to listen to music?
I do. I do like to listen to music. I've tried, sometimes I listen to podcasts, and I'll throw on like other people's, podcasts, and that's fun. But music, I like pretty much everything. I'm not into country. Sorry, anyone that likes country and was expecting me to enjoy it. I don't. But when I work out, this is one of those things that I think might be weird to some people, but I know there's a lot of other people that really do this as well. I love working out to like movie scores, and
Hmm.
like because I'm a very visual person. And so like when I can get the visual and auditory together, like when like a song from the Avengers comes on and all I'm doing is envisioning all of them like popping through the portals at the end of Endgame, I'm like, oh, I'm like so hyped up to go and do my next workout or whatever it is. And so I love listening to stuff like that don't really have words. That just kind of put you in that right mindset. And then like, I still have some like 90s rap that I still enjoy and some rock and stuff like that. I don't think I have a whole lot of stuff that's from the past, I don't know, 10 years in terms of music.
Yeah. I'm at that point too. I'm like, I don't know. I haven't listened to any new music in quite some time. And it used to be one of those things that I would like actively go look for. And now I'm like, I don't even like any of this new music. Like, I'm going to
No.
stick with what I'm comfortable with and go listen to
Yeah.
90s hip hop and pop punk from the 2000s. And
Yeah, like I'll throw some Outcast in there and like a few other things that I've got that have just been kind of sitting around in Spotify for years now. That's usually my go-tos.
yeah, I have so many Spotify playlists that I make. I'm like,
So
yeah,
many.
so
So many.
many. So when you watch football, like if the listener was to sit down with you while you're watching football, like how is a typical Sunday watching football with you?
So if this was a few years ago, a lot of fun. A lot of fun. There's beers, there's grilling, it's the whole thing. Now it's highly stressful. I'm making sure that I'm keeping up to date with all the news. I'm answering people's questions leading up to game time. I've been on the live streams for Football Guys, or someone else invites me onto their live stream elsewhere. Got to make sure all my rankings are updated to the second, like right up to kickoff. And now, as more and more of the people that know me are finding out what I do, I am their contact every Sunday morning. Hey, dude, who should I start? Give me options for my flex. Here's my whole roster. And I'm like, oh, and it's, I know I just made that noise. I really don't mind it at all. Like I tell them, keep texting me. So if any of you guys are listening, like, please, I do love it, especially if I get something right for them. It makes me feel so good. It's very validating to know that I can actually help someone, because as content creators, we don't always see that. We typically tend to
Mhm.
see when people comment and say like, you're an idiot because you got this wrong. You rarely know that, okay, I told this person the exact right advice. They took it and they won because of me. So that's always really gratifying to see that you were able to help somebody. But my Sundays, they're a little hectic. Once kickoff happens, I'll change into my Dolphins jersey, throw on some NFL Red Zone, and I'm sitting on the couch and I am not moving for 8 hours of commercial free football. And my wife knows that early on in the marriage, that was a tough thing to learn, that Sundays at 1 o'clock, I was not going anywhere. And then it became, wait, there's football on Monday. Wait, there's football Sunday nights as well. What? There's football on Thursday nights, and like she just kept learning. And that's why I won't watch college football, because she will absolutely leave me if I start watching more and more sports.
Yeah, yeah. I'm lucky if I get to watch the Cowboys game on a Sunday, like, it's my wife's like, "Nah," and I'm like, "I respect you, but, I'm gonna have to bring up the fact, like you said, we don't promote ourselves enough. If I wanna be full-time, I have to be watching football," and hopefully, this will be the podcast that my wife listens to. She hasn't listened to one yet, so she
Well,
said she gets
that turned
secondhand
into
embarrassment.
like a fun line that I could use now that I was doing this for a living, where it's someone, oh, we got to go to like my grandmother-in-law's house for a lunch or something. Oh no, I'm sorry. I have to watch the games.
Sure.
It's my job, and she doesn't have internet over there. So yeah, gotta stay
Yeah.
home and watch the games. Tough break.
Great advice always on this show, so
Yeah. Family
so
first.
exactly. So, okay, in the NFL, do you have a favorite player right now?
Ooh, I think I used to. Now that I'm doing fantasy football content, I've really done my best to um disassociate from favorite players. And I mean, I would say there's definitely guys that like I really, enjoy in the league. Like I love Amon St. Brown. That was a guy that I really liked coming out of college, and I was so happy when he was successful in the league. This was a guy that I thought could be like a fun sleeper or a fun steal, and to see how good he's doing is just phenomenal. So like that's an example, maybe a player nowadays, but I think I still like I do tend to live in the past a little bit, and you can see it over my shoulder here. I've got a Ricky Williams jersey. That was my guy growing up. Like I absolutely loved Ricky Williams and the Miami Dolphins. I had the unfortunate circumstances of becoming a Miami Dolphins fan after Dan Marino retired.
Oh.
And my first year watching was them just being awful and experiencing now 20 something years of them not getting a playoff win. So having a player like Ricky Williams, who was like an MVP candidate and so much fun to watch, that was my guy, and like still is. I absolutely love Ricky.
Man, missing out on Dan, man,
I know. It's rough, and like people always say, "Oh, you should be happy you're a Dolphins fan." You know, like, you had Dan Marino and the undefeated season, and I'm like, one, I was not alive for the undefeated season, so let's just get that right. I'm not that old, and two, like Dan Marino, I missed it. I missed all of it. So when people think I'm a huge fan, I'm like, I never got to see him play, but
Yeah.
I hear he was pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I with Aikman, it was kinda like that with me too, like, in the Super Bowls and everything, like, I was a child, so, like, I was not into football like I am now, and then we had to suffer through all the I don't wanna get into it. This is your podcast, I don't wanna be sad towards the end, and we're getting towards the end. I'm
Getting
already
depressed
sad
right
because I
here.
have to
Yeah.
say bye, and now I'm bringing up, bad memories.
The
Anyway.
Cowboys.
But I'm a big Dolphins fan in that you guys have, like, a dope color scheme. I wish the Cowboys had a dope color scheme. Sorry, they don't. Uh, just thought I'd throw that out. Um, okay, so before we wrap it up, I know this is a sad time in the podcast journey. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring up before I let you plug your stuff one more time?
Um, you know what I would just say is just for those of you that are trying to get started in the industry, it's going to be a long journey. It's going to be a tough journey. If this is something you really want to do, if this is the thing that you know you are called to do, you are meant to be in the industry, don't stop. Don't quit. Even just, doing one thing per week is necessary, and finding a niche for you where you can create even just a little bit of content and keep getting better each time, whether it's a part-time role, whether it's writing up rankings, whether it's writing one article, whether it's doing a 60-second TikTok video, just get your foot in the door, keep working hard, keep learning new skills, and I would say it's just continue to push forward. Not almost nothing is going to be given to you in the industry. There are people who are going to help, but the way that you can, I don't want to say make it, but the way that you can progress forward into the industry is to have ideas of your own, to push forward on those, and to find work. Work's not going to be given. Go and find it, make those connections, and just keep getting better with each and every rep that you do.
That's excellent advice. Yeah. Take what he said and run with it for sure. Alfredo, thank you again for coming on the show. Could you go ahead and just let everybody know one more time where they can find you, follow you, and find all your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the Pretend GM. And then all my work is going to be over on footballguys.com. We've got our YouTube channel, youtube.com/footballguysfantasy. That's where you can find me and Dave doing our weekly show, the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. It's also on Apple, Spotify. We've also got our Dynasty channel that just started new as well. We've got a new video up right now with Jagger May, who was a previous guest on Get Real with Kacey Kasem. And we've also got the Audible, which, I mean, they need no introduction, but absolutely go and check those guys out. And we've got a whole bunch of cool content coming out throughout the summer here. So make sure you're subscribed to Football Guys.
Excellent. Excellent. For sure. Go subscribe. Go check out all of Alfredo's work. Go check out Football Guys. And make sure you come back next time for another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. And remember to stay rad.
Get real. Time to get real, everybody.